Okay, so I want to teach you 3 things today on first aid. And the first thing is, and we'll get to our high-speed first aid kit here in a minute. Who knows the rule of 3s besides these people? Okay, what's the first rule of 3? You can live 3
minutes without air.
You can live 3 minutes without air. It's a way of prioritizing survival work. If all of a sudden you're crashed in the side of this mountain and a rainstorm's coming and it's not this mountain, you're in the middle of the Rockies or something, and it's like a rainstorm's coming and I'm bleeding, and so what do? Do I take care of the bleeding? Do I do a fire? Do I build a shelter? Do I go hunt a moose? You know, what do I do? So you can live 3 minutes without air. You can live 3 hours without shelter in an extremely dangerous weather conditions, like super hot or super cold. Got about 3 hours. They're rules of thumb. It doesn't mean you'll die in 3 hours and 1 minute. You can live 3 days without water. You can live 3 weeks without food. All right, so that's basically your priorities. And so the first priority is air. Well, air relates to blood too. Like right now we're all breathing, but if I'm squirting out blood or if my femoral artery is going, well, we need to stop that, or in 3 minutes I could be dead, or my partner could be dead, or whatever. And so blood carries what to the brain? Oxygen, right? So the first thing is, I should have a blanket out here. I guess we'll use a dog blanket. Joe, can I use you?
Yeah, sure.
Lay down here.
Am I wounded?
You're just unconscious. Okay, so you come upon an unconscious person of your party or not. You may have seen what happened. You know, we could all be walking and a tree limb could come down and hit them, right? Or you could say, all right, I'll be back in 5 minutes, and you could walk over there and you could come back and you see this person laying down. So you don't know what happened to this person. Well, the first thing we want to do when we come upon an injured person is what we call, does anybody know besides my wife? Scene size up. And so the bottom line is this: if the reason he's laying there, I do not give these words power, is because there's a 14-foot rattlesnake that has just bit him and it's laying right there, I don't want to run up here and go, are you okay? Right? Electrical lines down, it's touching his foot, you know, he's in Sniper Alley and there's a sniper up there shooting. You know, whatever, there's 1,000 reasons why this person could be laying down. And so the first thing you want to do when you first notice that person is figure out, all right, is it safe for me to go there? Right? Because it's not going to do you any good if you go into the situation and get yourself hurt. Now Sister Kate has 2 people to deal with instead of 1. Does that make sense? Yeah. So we look at, we try to figure out what the mechanism of injury is. You know, what hurt this person? You might not know. The next thing you do is, hey, this is Shofar Mountain. We own the whole place and we take naps where we want. So I don't want to come up to him and start doing first aid on him and stuff, and he could wake up and punch me. You know, what are you doing? And so you get close to him and you're like, hey, and you can say it loud because they're sleeping maybe. Are you okay? Are you okay?
Yeah,
hey,
good.
Then you can kind of like, like that, you know, because you don't know what he's going to do. You can shake him right here. Hey, are you okay? And then the last thing you want to do to make sure they're not sleeping is you take your knuckles like this, and I'm not going to do it for real. You rub it on their sternum hard. You can do it on a man or a woman right here. Hey, are you okay? That'll wake somebody up if they're sleeping, even if they're drunk or something. They'll give you a response. Okay, so they're there. He's laying there. We don't know what's happening. The first thing we want to do is make sure, rule of 3s, what? Breathing. He's breathing, right? And so the easiest way to do that, can I take your glasses off?
Yeah, sure.
I'm going to put them up right there so you don't lose them. We have to open up the airway. He could have his tongue down in his throat. He could have anything going on. And so you put your hand on his forehead like this. You take your other hand under their neck. If he's at the bottom of a cliff, if there's a ladder tipped over, we're not going to do all this, okay, because he could have a broken neck. All right? But I'm assuming we don't have that. I'll tell you that later. Put your hand on his forehead, other hand under his or her neck right here, and we're simply just going to tilt like that. That's all you got to do. Now what we're going to do is you put your face like this, and you're looking this way, and you look, listen, and feel for breathing. All right, so I should feel him breathing on my ear. I should hear him breathing on my ear, and I'm looking right down the chest line and the belly line. Guys breathe with their belly a lot, and I'm looking for rise and fall, rise and fall. If I have that, I'm good. All right, if we're breathing, we're good. Does that make sense? If I don't have breathing, we're not good. If he's, relax your head a little bit. If he's laying like that and he had a fall, and we don't want to mess with the neck, and I'm not getting into that today, I'm only covering 3 things. You can take your thumb, and I'm not going to do it, and you stick it in here, hook it over his teeth, and you lift up the jaw and pull it out. All right, you're not really messing with the neck at that point, but you're opening up the airway a little bit, and you can do that. All right, but we don't want to break their neck. And so we look, listen, and feel for breathing. It's real important. Who here knows how to do mouth-to-mouth resuscitation? You can relax. But you're gonna be there. The Red Cross, I think, made a horrible mistake. We're not teaching CPR here today, but we've taken CPR so many times. You get certified every year, and they've stopped teaching mouth-to-mouth respiration with CPR. And CPR was typically mouth-to-mouth respiration and chest compressions. And they quit doing it because there are enough people out there in the world that don't want to put their mouth on somebody else's mouth that they weren't doing CPR at all. And so they don't even teach it anymore. It's like,
just
man,
compressions, right?
yeah, just chest compressions. That's ridiculous. All right, so the way you do mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, lay back, open the airway, close their nose, open their mouth. You can sweep their mouth if you think they've got, like if they've got a sandwich in their mouth or something, you can go through their mouth and pull that out. You can turn their head to the side and get the stuff out if they do. But a lot of times if somebody's shocked or something like that, they just stop breathing. And you can get them breathing again pretty quickly. Pinch off their nose, open up their mouth like this, seal your mouth on their mouth, and blow. While you're blowing, watch their chest. Their chest should come up. If their chest doesn't come up, they've got something going on in their throat. Okay, they've got a blockage in there that you have to clear. Breathe in, watch the chest go down. Breathe in, watch the chest go down. Okay, so you breathe in, their chest comes up, and then it'll just go down on its own. And you can give them like, if someone has drowned or something like that, yeah, I'm just doing so you don't have sun on your face. If someone has been underwater, you can get them up. A lot of times when you're doing that, they're going to throw up. Okay, you'll feel it coming, and it'll be, turn their head to the side, let them throw up. A lot of times with a drowning victim, they'll do that and then they'll be okay. They'll start breathing again. Okay, that's the main part I want to deal with you guys right now, is just get that airway open when they're laying on the ground, and if you have to, do mouth to mouth. You can turn their head to the side and scoop the stuff out. Everybody here knows the Heimlich, right? When someone's standing up. Does anybody not know the Heimlich maneuver? Okay, stand up, Joe. If you're in a restaurant and you're having a good time and you're talking about 2XT and it's like, man, that was so good and I'm so hungry because I didn't. And all of a sudden you've got like a chunk of hamburger in your throat. This is the universal sign for I'm choking. I'm not goofing around here. If you see that in a restaurant, act. You know, because everyone else is going to be doing this. Oh my God, are you okay? Can you breathe? Do you have something in it? We're wasting time here, people. You know, so you come up to the person. Come on over here. I don't want to step on the front. We're going to end up using this blanket again. You come up to the person, you go, are you choking? And they'll be like, make a fist. Actually, I like doing it with this one better. And where your sternum is, right here, you go right up underneath the sternum. Not on the sternum, underneath it. It's like where you punch somebody in the stomach and it takes all the wind out of them. Make a fist like this, put it right there. I'm not going to do it to you. Don't do this to somebody who's not having a Heimlich maneuver. Stand right behind them, grab your other fist like this, and then the way we're pulling is in and up. So it's like this. And you give it a good like that. And what happens is, it's the same thing when you punch somebody there. It expels all the air because you're hitting their diaphragm. You've got a diaphragm in here and you're compressing that diaphragm out. It makes the lungs squeeze like that. And a lot of times they'll projectile out what they have. And then you're like, ah, and they're like, happens all the time. I know people who've done this in restaurants. And say, Pastor Dow did it in a restaurant. A guy I worked with at Leavenworth came back from lunch one day and said, I got to do the Heimlich maneuver today. What'd he spit up? A hot dog. Is he okay? Yeah, he went back and ate. I mean, you know, it's just like, it's crazy, but you can save somebody's life. Because if you call 911 and wait for them to come, you got 3 minutes, they're done. Okay, so that's the Heimlich maneuver. If somebody's down on the ground, just pretend he's laying down because I just spread the blanket out. You can do the Heimlich maneuver, kind of straddle their body, and you can push down and up like that here, and they'll sometimes, all right? So that's the best you can do, thank you, with airway. But that's important. Okay, now to this lovely thing. I said this is a first aid kit because we're normal people. We don't walk around with backpacks full of medical gear day in and day out. If you're carrying a bob, and you guys are all invited to the winter bob camp out, we do it every year. People show up the first couple years with these bug out bags that are like this big and weigh 90 pounds. We go walking through there and they're like, don't need this, don't need this, don't need this, don't need this. And it's amazing how much you don't need this first aid kit that's this big, right? And so those things go out. So you're gonna have what you have when you're encountering a first aid situation, typically. I carry, when I'm in the woods all the time, a bandana. Looks like this. I got these when I was in the Army. We call them drive-on rags. And this is a really versatile piece of cloth right here. I just shot a video where it was really hot here the other day, and I just soaked it in water, and I just wear it like this all day, and then I get it wet again, and I keep putting it on, and it just evaporates off my shirt, and it makes me feel cool. But you can do all kinds of things with this. A lot of the ladies wear head coverings, so you've got, you know, a lot of stuff that you can use that way. And so when you have sheets at home that you no longer are using, save them, wash them. These aren't sterile, but you could sterilize them. You could sterilize sheets by cutting them into the shape you want, wash it, and then stick it in a steamer, like a pressure canner kind of thing. You can steam your sheets, and then using sterile gloves and tongs or whatever, you could take that and stick it in a Ziploc bag and seal it, clean Ziploc bag, or you could stick it in a food saver and suck the air out, and then you could have relatively sterile, as sterile as you're going to get, bandages for kind of free. I keep looking, you know, I wonder what hotels do, because you know hotels have to rotate their sheets fairly regularly, because I stay in a fair number of hotels, and the sheets are not threadbare sheets. What do they do with them? I would love to find a box of sheets from a hotel, because I would do that, I would make stuff. Well, we had a sheet that the elastic wore out on the two corners, it wouldn't stay on the bed anymore, right? And so we cut it up, and I'd love to tell you that I took the time to lay it out and draw beautiful triangles. I didn't, okay? I tried to make some triangles and some I didn't. But let's see what we got in this one. Well, it might be. Some of them were just squares. Yeah, see, I just cut them up. But we're going to talk about bleeding. Come on, assistant. I'll put you in the shade this time.
I'm fine. It's probably good for the video.
All right. Right here? You can stand up right now. All right, so it doesn't matter if you cut yourself with your knife when we're doing, you know, knife sharpening or whatever. That doesn't matter. We're not going to mess with that. You know, wash it, put a Band-Aid on it. What do you say? Rub some dirt in it. Rub some dirt in it. Be a man. Right? Don't worry about that. We're talking about bleeding. We're talking about cuts. How many people here have had stitches? Guilty. Good. All right. We're talking about that kind of stuff. And so, if he has a cut right here, this is a great place to teach cuts because it's really easy to deal with. The cut right here. Right? It's nice and smooth and long. He has a cut here. Yeah. And it's spurting blood. What's the first thing we do?
Put pressure on it?
Put pressure on it. That's exactly right. I was hoping somebody would say, go get a pair of gloves. Okay, so this is reality in today's society. My wife and I were volunteer firefighters for 10 years. She's an EMT. We did more sick calls, more accidents than we did fires. Okay, it's amazing the number of already messed up people who get messed up. Druggies and drunks hurt themselves in great numbers. And so I would not take my bare hand and stick it on the blood of somebody who I didn't know pretty well. Because hepatitis C right? Is that the one? Doesn't go away. AIDS
Right.
doesn't go away. I mean, it's a real thing to think about.
Tuberculosis.
But
doesn't
if
go away.
we're talking about second Exodus training, you're with your group of believers, you probably know that nobody here has a bloodborne disease, and so I'll do that. So the first thing we want to do is put direct pressure on the wound. If you have something, your bandana, your t-shirt, your hat, whatever, that's better. Okay, so I'm wearing my little bandana here. It's wet, it's dirty, it's full of sweat, so what? Okay, he's squirting blood. All right, it's not time for me to, hold on, I'll be right back. I have a really good first aid kit in my truck. Okay, so take what you have, throw it on there, and when we say direct pressure, we're all going to practice this. I'm going to stop talking here in a second. We're going to practice this. You put good pressure on there. Direct pressure and elevation. What do we mean by What do we mean by elevation?
Above your heart.
Above your heart. So if he's laying down,
Easy.
lift it like that. If they're standing up, you probably want to sit them down. All right, hey, why don't you sit down? Why don't you lay down? If it's going to be much hotter than this, you want to lay them down where it's comfortable. So let's move over here. Come on, let's go in the shade. Direct pressure and elevation. That will solve so many. I've taken this, I've put direct pressure and elevation on it. It's not stopping. All right, there's a lot of blood coming out of this thing. At this point, I'm definitely going to have them lay down. Okay. What we want to do whenever anybody's injured is lie to them. People hate it when you say that, but it's true. You tell them, oh, this is easy, man. I got this one. No, seriously, this one's easy. This is a little cut. You're
gonna be fine.
Quit whining. Whatever that person needs to hear. You want to tell them that they're going to be fine. People can go in shock for absolutely no reason, and shock's a killer.
You can die from shock.
So, little story. I'm in Army training, and we're digging foxholes. So a foxhole's this deep, right? And so it's me and 30 guys are out there. We're on the edge of the tree line, and we've got these it's like laser tag things on. So if somebody shoots at you and they hit you, it goes beep. And the only way to make that stop is you take a key out of your gun and you stick it in here, and it makes stop. Now your gun doesn't work. Okay? Or if they're missing you, if they're close, it goes beep 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 beep, and that means they're getting close to you. So we dig this hole. I'm outside of the hole cutting some camouflage, just sticking my helmet. My buddy's in the hole guarding, and all of a sudden somebody starts shooting at us. And my thing's going beep 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 beep. That means he's shooting at me. And so I had my helmet in one hand, my rifle in the other hand. I said, "Look out!" And I jumped down into the hole. Right? Well, the hole's this deep. My buddy's in the hole. I landed on his foot. And when I landed, my rifle went like that, and it hit me on the back of the head. And so, when you get wrapped on the head, it's like, ow, like that. So we're both in the bottom of our hole. The hole's up here. He's going, ow, ow, ow. And I'm going, ow, ow, like that. And he goes, are you okay? Yeah. I'm like, are you okay? Yeah. And he goes, I'm going to start shooting. So he starts shooting. Well, I feel all this wet stuff on my neck. I mean, just like wet. And I go, hey, Alan. And he's like, yeah, what? I said, look at my head, see if I'm bleeding. And so he squats down, and I'll never forget this. This is why I'm telling this story. We were kind of tan at the time. It was summertime. I go like this, and I go, look at my head. And I look at him, and I watch the blood come down out of his face. It just went, he was going into shock from my injury. And what had happened was I had no hair like I do now, very tan head, and it split open my head, and the skin parted because your scalp is tight. And right underneath your tan skin, for everybody here, is white skin, very white. He thought that was my skull, right? He's like, oh my gosh, he split to the skull, and blood was coming out everywhere. He started going into shock. I had to calm him down, and I'm the one that got 3 stitches in my head. Okay, so everything's gonna be okay, but it's not, because it's not stopping bleeding. All right, so I've got direct pressure, I'm elevating. The next thing you want to do is what we call tie a pressure dressing on it. And so leave this on. This is all full of blood now, right? It's soppy blood. We may take another one and put it on there. It's still not working because I can't get enough pressure on it. And so what we do, we take our bandana. You guys are going to do this here in about 30 seconds. Put it underneath like this, and then we wrap it tightly around. Remember how tight we squeeze your arms? We want it at least that tight. And then we bring it around, and you put the knot on top of the wound. That's important, okay? Because that's where we want all the pressure going on this thing. And we pull the knot down. You guys know how to tie a square knot? We'll teach that later. Right now, just tie a knot. Left over right and under, right over left and under. And you tie that on there tight. So it's doing direct pressure on itself. If it's still bleeding at that point, we're going to put more pressure on it until we can get another thing. We can tie another pressure dressing right on top of this because it'll get tighter. Does that make sense? So real quickly, we use one pad that's on the wound, direct pressure and elevation. Man, this thing's still working. Or maybe I've got something else to do. You know, maybe he's injured also. All right. So put this on, wrap it around however many times you can, pull it tight on top of the wound, bring it around, and then tie your knot on top of the wound. The key here, because y'all are getting ready to do this, make them tight. You're not going to hurt anybody here. If somebody's hand starts falling asleep, we'll take it off. Okay? But make them tight. When we do this, people never make them tight enough. There used to be all these teachings about tourniquets, and I don't need to go into what they were, but basically, never put a tourniquet on or you're going to lose a limb. But if we have a traumatic amputation, hand's gone, blood spurting out. Sometimes direct pressure and elevation will work on that too, because the body has a way of sucking the veins and the arteries back in, and they kind of close down, they retract in, and so sometimes that works, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes we have a terrible wound here and a terrible wound over there, and there's only one of me. And so if I'm over here applying a pressure dressing to him, you know, this person over here is bleeding out. All right, so we have to use a tourniquet. When you use a tourniquet, you want to put it obviously above the cut, between the cut and the heart, right? And you're going to need, if this is the cut, you're going to need at least this much space above it to put your tourniquet on. Okay. The ideal thing for a tourniquet is something that's a little bit wide, or a belt, or if it's a good tie, a tie, not a piece of 550 cord or something like that. Because sometimes if it's too thin and 550 cord clothesline will cut through. It'll actually cut through the skin, and now you got two injuries. So we don't want to cut. And the way we do a tourniquet, they're pretty quick once you learn how to do them. Matter of fact, we're using tourniquets so much in the military now that people carry 2 or 3 of them on their combat gear. Some people put them on and put them on mildly tight on all 4 limbs, and so that if they get shot, they can do their own tourniquet. All right. But you guys aren't going to be walking around with tourniquets, but you will be walking around with something like this. And so what we do is we put this on like above the limb, pretty simple, right? Tie a knot, pull it down, just like that. You know, you're not going to stop the blood flow that way. Take a stick. It's called a windlass, but it doesn't matter. It could be a knife. It could be a Sharpie. A Sharpie would work. You know, something strong like that. But just something like this. Lay that on. You guys are all going to practice this in a second. Lay that on there, and then tie a knot on top of that. And then tie it again, like this. Start twisting. Now, when we do this with each other, I just want you to twist until the person says, okay, because they're going to feel it, all right? And we just start twisting. Tell me when you feel it.
I mean, I can feel it getting tighter. That's probably right about there. It's pretty tight.
Okay. Then all we do is we take another, can you hold that for a second?
I have one in my hand.
Oh, okay. We take another thing and you tie the windlass down so it can't unwind. Right? Like that. Turn until the blood stops. It's just like a faucet. All right? Turn until the blood stops, and then just tie off your windlass. You don't have to tie it super tight. You're just keeping it from unwinding. You'll hear things, you hear all kinds of stupid things about tourniquets. Loosen it. No. Once you put a tourniquet on, you leave it on until medical authorities take it off. If you're on your own in a second Exodus event and you had a traumatic amputation and we do it, that's beyond the scope of this class. That'll be in our advanced classes for later, how we do amputations, and we'll probably deal with that later. Read up on Civil War history and you'll learn. Lots of amputations when they didn't even know what germs were, and lots of people lived. So we can deal with this stuff. But again, quickly, relax. Above the wound, it's got to be high enough above the wound that your tourniquet doesn't slip off, you know, the stump or whatever. Tie a knot, just a regular overhand knot. Put your windlass on, tie a real knot on top of that, and twist. And I highly recommend everybody here takes the CPR course and get your card. Again, it's free to like $40, somewhere in there, depending on who's doing it. Just look up Red Cross in your neighborhood, call them up, and they'll tell you it will give you so much confidence, it will give you so many basic skill sets that you can help your loved one if something happens. I was in Special Forces for 17 years, and I probably have medical skills equivalent to a paramedic minus the drugs, because paramedics can push drugs, and I didn't get that training. But as far as everything they can do, I was trained to do that, more in some cases. And yet and still I made my wife go become an EMT. And she's like, well, why do I have to be an EMT? You know all this stuff. I said, well, I'm the one that's hurt. You know, I want you to be able to deal with me. And so, like everything else, you should seek out training, seek out training, seek out training, and try and get as good as you can, because the life of your loved one could depend on that someday.